Welcome back to SL Tonight RPG Night. I'm Felix Lebowski, and before we go in tonight, there's something I need to tell you about the comic we're exploring. Horror from the Tomb, issue number 1, was published in September 1954 by Premiere Magazine. That's not a name you'll know. Premiere was not EC Comics. They weren't Harvey, they weren't Atlas. They were a small publisher that looked at the booming horror market of the early 1950s and decided that they'd get a piece of it. They hired artists George Woodbridge, Angelo Torres, John D. Augustino, and a few others whose names you might recognize from other corners of the pre-code era, and they put one issue of exactly kind of blood-soaked, morally unhinged anthology horror that was selling 1.2 billion comics a year across America at the time. One issue. That's all they got. Because the distributor, a company called Cable News, with a K, had a president named George B. Davis, and George B. Davis personally saw the issue before it went out and killed it on the spot. One man, one decision. That was it for Horror from the Tomb. It survived anyway, as all good horrors do. It became the cleaned up, mysterious stories, and eventually code-proof, and eventually that ended too. But the original issue, the one Davis tried to kill, is preserved on Comic Book Plus. Fully to public domain, free to read by anyone with an internet connection. And tonight, our explorer is going to read all of it. The hard way. This episode, our RPG system is Fate. Specifically, Fate Core. Published in 2013 by Evil Hat Productions and released under a Creative Commons license, which means it's also free. 2 public domain artifacts, 1 underground tomb. Let's go. Stop 1. The graveyard entrance. The keeper of the gate. Iron gate, overgrown with vines. Stone walls surrounding a graveyard of tilted monuments and mausoleums. A figure stands just inside the gate. The keeper, ancient, thin, holding a lantern that illuminates nothing useful. The explorer approaches. The keeper does not move. The gates open in. The keeper of the graveyard welcomes you. He's not a named character with a backstory, he is a function. Every anthology horror comic of the 1950s had one. DC Comics gave you the Crypt Keeper, the Old Witch, and the Vault Keeper. 3 rotating hosts who opened each story with a terrible pun and closed it with another. The hosts were as important as the series, as the story. They were the frame that made the horror safe to enjoy. A winking figure who acknowledged that you knew it was a comic, that you came here on purpose, that the screaming was part of the pleasure. Premiere magazines had their own version. In Horror from the Tomb, the intro page features Grandma Gruesome's Dead Time story, framed by exactly this kind of ghoulish hostess energy, one of the wraparound pieces that tied the anthology together. Now, before we go further, a quick word on how tonight's RPG rules work. We're using Fate. Fate was designed by Rob Donahue and Fred Hicks, released through Yahoo Group in 2000 as a house rule hack of an earlier system called Fudge. Fudge had been created by Stephen O'Sullivan in 1992. Open source from the beginning, free to download and modify. Donahue and Hicks took it, stripped it down, and rebuilt it around a single concept that changed how a lot of people think about tabletop games. The aspect. An aspect is a short phrase, 2 to 5 words, that describes the truth about your character or your situation. Not a stat, not a number, a narrative fact. Our Explorer's character sheet tonight has one aspect already written. Came here on purpose. That matters. Keeper gestures towards the first path, the Explorer follows. Moving, the graveyard path. Stone paths weave between monuments. The dates on the graves are all 1954 or earlier. The graveyard is arranged as a map, and the map is the issue. Pre-code horror anthologies were built exactly like dungeons. A series of chambers, each self-contained, each with its own monster and its own victim, connected by a host who walked you from room to room. You entered at the front, you exit at the back, and the issue was the experience of that traversal. By September 1954, the pre-code era was days from ending. Dr. Frederick Wortham had published Seduction of the Innocent in April of that year, claiming comics caused juvenile delinquency, claims that a scholar named Carol Tilly would prove 60 years later were based on fabricated and manipulated evidence. But in 1954, the Senate believed them. The subcommittee on juvenile delinquency hauled EC Comics publisher William Gaines in front of cameras and made him defend a cover with a severed head and a bloody axe, which Gaines called good taste for a horror comic, a line that went over as exactly as well as you'd expect. The Comics Code Authority was announced publicly on October 26, 1954, barely a month after Horror from the Tomb #1 hit stands. The code banned the word horror and terror from comic titles. It banned Walking Dead. It banned excessive bloodshed, brutal torture, and physical agony. It banned most of what you're about to see in these next 4 channels. Everything buried in this graveyard was illegal by November. Stop 2. The Alpine Path, The Werewolf of the Alps, Act 1. The first path winds upward, snow-dusted stone, pine trees, the kind of mountain atmosphere you don't expect inside a tomb. The carved stone reads, The Werewolf of the Alps. Explorer examines the carving. He hears something moving in the trees above. Our first story is the lead story, and it is genuinely strange even by 1954 standards. The man is a werewolf. This is established immediately. No slow burn, no mystery. He's a werewolf, and he knows it, and he's deeply unhappy about it in a way that the best pre-code horror protagonists are unhappy. Completely, articulately, and with zero hope of improvement. He meets a woman. He falls in love. Husband is in the way. In Fate terms, this is our explorer gaining an aspect from the scene. There's something in the trees. Scene aspects work like this. There are facts about the environment that anyone can use. The monster can use them too. The keeper of the graveyard can reach down into the scene and compel that aspect at any moment. Often the explorer a fate point in exchange for the situation getting worse. That's what a compel is. The GM says, here's a fate point, the thing in the trees is getting closer, what do? You can refuse a compel, but refusing costs you a fate point. And if you don't have fate points, you can't invoke your own aspects when you need a bonus. The system is elegant precisely because it makes horror feel like horror. The bad thing is coming, you can see it coming, and you have to decide how much you're willing to pay to avoid it. The Werewolf of the Alps did not pay enough. The explorer keeps moving, fast. Stop 3. The Mountain Cabin, The Werewolf of the Alps, Act 2. A stone cabin, door hanging open, firelight visible inside. Something has happened here. Something has happened very recently. Explorer slows at the doorway. He looks inside. He doesn't go in yet. The husband is dead. The werewolf kills him. Classic pre-code. The violence is implied rather than shown in the worst of it, but the implication is clear and the art does the rest. The werewolf gets the girl. And then the story does the thing that makes it actually worth reading. The girl transforms. She is a werelion. She has been a werelion this whole time. The woman the werewolf killed a man to claim was, herself, exactly the kind of thing he was. The monster fell in love with the monster. The story ends with them standing in the moonlight, both transformed, staring at each other, two predators who just cleared the field for each other without either of them knowing. This is what pre-code horror did that post-code horror largely couldn't. Irony with teeth. Not just the bad guy getting punished, not just a jump scare and a moral. A genuine twist that reframes everything that came before. The monster's great romantic tragedy turned out to be a farce. Or a love story, depending on how you look at it. Pre-code didn't tell you which. In Fate, this is what happens when the GM compels an aspect you didn't know was there. The werewolf had an aspect, once alone. He thought he was invoking it as a strength. The keeper looked at it and said, here's a fate point. You're not as alone as you thought. He should have checked what kind of aspect he was holding. Moving. The lower paths. The path descending from the mountain area into the older, deeper part of the graveyard. The graves here are more elaborate, the monuments larger, the atmosphere heavier. Between stories, a note on the artist. Horror from the Tomb was illustrated by, among others, George Woodbridge, who went on to a long career at Mad magazine, and Angelo Torres, who became one of Mad's most beloved and long-running contributors. Angelo Torres was still contributing to Mad in the 2000s. Same pen that drew werewolf transformations for a publisher killed by a nervous distributor in 1954 ended up doing movie parodies for the most beloved humor magazine in America for 60 more years. Art finds a way to get out of the tubes. Fate finds a way too. The first version, the 2000 Yahoo Group Draft, had almost no readership. The 2003 polished edition won the Indie RPG Award for Best Free Game. Spirit of the Century in 2006 brought it into a mainstream indie RPG audience with a 1920s pulp adventure setting. Gorilla and a biplane on the cover, genuine enthusiasm for the era, a system that rewarded players for making their characters complicated rather than obvious. The Fate 4 Kickstarter in 2012 asked for $3,000. It raised over $433,000. Because sometimes the thing that was always good just needs to find the moment when the world is ready for it. Top 4. The Bone Chambers. The Bone Man, Act 1. A wide underground chamber, walls lined with bones arranged into patterns, not random, deliberately organized, cataloged, labeled in shaking handwriting. Someone loved these bones. Explorer enters carefully. He reads one of the labels. He reads another. He begins to understand what kind of person made this room. The Bone Man. Dr. Harlow. The story doesn't give him a first name worth mentioning. He is a paleontologist. He loves bones the way the werewolf of the Alps loved the wrong woman. Completely, obsessively, to his obvious destruction. He has spent his career collecting and studying and categorizing. His colleagues think him eccentric. They are significantly underestimating the situation. In Fate, the character aspect, obsession before self-preservation, is what the system calls a problematic aspect, one that's more useful to the keeper than to the player. The player wrote it on a character sheet because it felt true, because it was a good story choice, and now the keeper can compel it at any time. Compels don't punish you for your aspects, they complete them. They say, if this is really true about you, then here's how that truth is going to make your life complicated right now. Dr. Harlow's truth makes his life very complicated. His colleagues betray him. The bones he found, his discovery, his life's work, gets attributed to someone else. Academic theft, clean and brutal and entirely consequence-free for everyone involved except Harlow. Keeper smiles. He has a fate point for the good doctor. The explorer doesn't touch the bones. He has enough sense for that much. Top 5. The Ossuary. The Bone Man, Act 2. Deeper in, a secondary chamber. Older. The bones here, older too. This is where the story gets dark. The explorer can see, in the far corner, signs of a much more recent arrangement. The explorer stops walking. He looks at what's in the corner and takes a step back. Harlow snaps. This is the part of the comic that got George B. Davis on the phone to cable news. The description of the promotional copy around the 2021 reprint describes plainly people melted down for their bones. Harlow started collecting bones again. Different bones. Contemporary bones. The people who wronged him got added to the collection. The obsession completed itself in the most literal possible way. The man who loved bones more than anything else made sure he would have enough of them. This is the darkest version of what pre-code horror comics offer. Not supernatural terror, but human terror. A man pushed past his limit by institutional betrayal who found that his limit, once passed, had no lower boundary. The genre gave writers permission to follow that logic all the way to its conclusion, something the code would ban, not because the logic was wrong, but because the image of following it to the end was considered too much. The Comics Code Authority, when it came, forbade scenes dealing with, or instruments associated with, Walking Dead or torture, and brutal torture, excessive and unnecessary knife and gunplay, physical agony. It did not forbid the portrait of a man destroyed by institutional injustice. It didn't need to. Once you removed the images, the story had nowhere to go. In Fate, the Keeper offers Harlow a final compel. His aspect, obsession over self-preservation, activates one last time. He accepts it. He already has more bones than he could ever need. The explorer leaves the ossuary. He does not look at the corner on the way out. Top 6. The Throne Room. You can't keep a good king down. A grand carved chamber, throne at the far end, clearly royal, clearly ancient. The throne is occupied. The creature seated in it is not, technically speaking, alive. The explorer stops at the entrance. The figure in the throne turns its head. Slowly. Well, you can't keep a good king down is the title, and the story is exactly what it says. A prince murders his brother to take the throne. Clean, calculated, Machiavellian play executed without apparent regret. He gets the crown. He sits in exactly this chair. And then the dead king comes back. And comes back again. And again. Every time the new king thinks it's over, his brother's corpse finds its way back to wherever the throne is. The murdered king is not terrifying in the traditional sense. He does not attack. He does not scheme. He simply returns again and again and sits where he used to sit and waits, with the patience of the already dead. In Fate, the dead king has an aspect, already paid the worst price, and it is completely unassailable. The prince has fate points, he has skills, he has an army. The dead king doesn't need any of that. The dead king cannot be compelled to feel fear or pain or urgency. His aspect can be invoked for literally free every time because he has nothing left to lose. This is the mechanical version of something horror understood long before RPGs did. The truly dangerous thing is the one you can't threaten. The prince has power over the living. The dead king is not living. The new king goes mad. Obviously. The story doesn't apologize for the obvious ending because the obvious ending is the right one. The explorer does not sit in the throne. The keeper looks mildly disappointed. Top 7. The Laboratory. The Absent-Minded Professor. A different chamber entirely. Almost domestic. Incongruously so. A work table, shelves of equipment, a framed wedding portrait on the wall. The bride is lovely. The groom is assembled. Explorer looks at the portrait, looks at the work table, looks at the portrait again. The math begins to land. The Absent-Minded Professor is the darkest comedy in this anthology, and it is funnier and darker than it has any right to be. A woman marries a professor. He is kind if distracted. He is prone to forgetting things, losing items, being elsewhere in his mind while physically present. She finds this charming, at first. Then she notices the hand. Not quite right. She notices the ear. Also, not quite right. She notices more things. An artificial foot. An eye that doesn't blink in the expected rhythm. The professor, piece by piece, is not the original professor. He is the professor's note made physical. A reconstruction of a man from parts that approximate a man, assembled over time by a mind that was better at cataloging components than it was at being a person. The 1950 pre-code audience would have recognized the Frankenstein lineage immediately. That Haggard and Shelley's monster was built from tragedy and hubris and ambition. This one was built from absent-mindedness, not a god complex, a filing problem. The professor kept losing pieces of himself and replacing them so methodically that at some point we lost track of which pieces were original. In Fate terms, the professor's aspect is built from what was available. And the compel that closes the story is simply, his wife finally does the inventory. The Code Authority, when it came, would have had a complicated relationship with this one. It's not violent, it's not gory, it's something worse. It's genuinely unsettling in a way that no checklist of banned content could quite address. The horror isn't the artificial part. The horror is that he never noticed they changed him. The explorer steps away from the wedding portrait. He checks his own hands briefly, then feels embarrassed about it. Stop 8. The final crypt. The text stories and the theme. The deepest chamber, stone walls, old torch sconces, 2 carved stone tablets set into opposite walls like plaques, text etched into each. No illustrations. Explorer reads the first tablet, reads the second, and stands still for a moment. The 2 short text stories that filled are Horror from Tomb Number 1, Revenge from the Grave, and Off with the Head were a standard format filler for anthology comics of the era. Text stories satisfied a postal regulation that gave magazines a lower mailing rate if they contained a certain proportion of prose, not the start. Horror comics included text stories for the postage discount. Stories were usually short, punchy, and exactly what their titles promised. Revenge from the Grave is a revenge story. Off with the Head is a beheading story. Random magazines did not vary the lead. But standing here in the final crypt, looking with the 4 main stories have in common. Werewolves of the Alps, a man who pursued something he wanted, destroyed another life to get it, and discovered he had no idea what he was actually dealing. The Bone Man, a man whose legitimate grievance, taken to its logical conclusion, made it into something that would have horrified his earlier self. Can't keep a good king down. A man who committed an irreversible act and then discovered that irreversible does not mean consequence-free. The Absent-Minded Professor, a man who lost himself so gradually he never registered the loss. These are not random horror scenarios. There are 4 variations on a theme. The price of what you wanted is something you didn't know you would pay. There's also, accidentally, the design thesis of fate. Aspects, the narrated truths your character is built from, are not just resources. They're commitments. When you write down, "will do anything to protect the collection," or "already paid the worst price," or "built from what was available," you're not just describing your character. You're signing a contract with the keeper about what kind of story this is going to be. The keeper will hold you to it. The explorer reads the final words of both tablets. He writes something in a small notebook he produces from his coat. He does not share what he wrote. Stop 9. The exit, the surface. Back through the graveyard, past the monuments, to the iron gate, daylight visible on the other side. Gray, overcast, but daylight. The keeper stands at the gate and does not speak. He simply opens. Explorer passes through the gate. He turns and looks back at the graveyard. The gate is already closed. Horror from the Tomb Number 1 was killed by a single man who didn't want to distribute it. He survived anyway. Because these things do. They became mysterious stories. Mysterious stories ran until code made it impossible. The code ran into 2011 when the last major publisher, Archie Comics, finally stopped using it and even called it "the end feels generous" since DC had already stopped submitting in 2011 and Marvel in 2001. The horror was always going to come back. The dead king always does. Fate survived too. The 2000 Yahoo Group Draft became the 2003 Indie Award winner, became Spirit of the Century in 2006, became the Dresden Files RPG in 2010, because a Kickstarter that asked for $3,000 and got $433,000. Fate Core is released under Creative Commons. You can download it free right now from Evil Hat's website. You can use it, modify it, publish your own game book. The things built to last tend to find their way back to the surface. Both of these, the comic and the system, were made by people who understood that the real purpose of horror, whether in a 10-cent anthology from 1954 or an RPG session in a graveyard, is never to terrify you into submission. It is to sit you down in a room with something true and make sure you can't leave until you've looked at it properly. Keeper was right about one thing, came here on purpose. Horror from the Tomb Number 1 is available free at Comic Book Plus, comicbookplus.com. Public domain, no copyright, read. And you will also be able to find it on the website after I do a page-to-page, cover-to-cover read, so look forward to that. Fate Core is available free from Evil Hat Productions at evilhat.com. Creative Commons, modify it, run it, share it. And again, www.sltonight.com, and you will find this comic and all the other comics that I have read on the series, along with my deep dive movies without my lovely voice. And you can just watch them restored, free of charge, public domain and all. What should our explorer dig up next? Leave it in the comments. This has been SL Tonight, RPG Night. I am Felix Lebeski. Stay weird. Good night.